Hey everybody, it's Heather Vickery. Have you taken our listener survey yet? If not, pause the podcast, head on over to www.vickeryandco.com/survey. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes, and it really helps me get a better understanding of who my listeners are. We want to make sure we're giving you what you're looking for and having a collaborative effort here on this show. Everyone who participates gets to have a say in the charity we are supporting via the survey. And also, if you choose to leave your name and email address, you will be entered to win a $100 Visa gift card, as well as some other great prizes that are specific to the show. Again, that's www.vickeryandco.com/survey. And the survey will be live until August 12th. So be sure to check it out, share it with your friends. They have to be listeners, of course. And thanks so much for the support. Okay, here's the show.
Compassion, courage, creativity.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Hi, everybody. This is Heather Vickery. Today, I welcome Casee Marie to the show. Casee shares her story of lifelong severe anxiety. It's really an extraordinary story. And Casee, I want to welcome you to the show. We're not talking about your everyday anxiety here, are we?
Thank you so much. No, we're definitely not.
Yeah. Really happy to have you here. Can you just tell me a little bit about your background and what you mean when you say severe anxiety?
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I've had anxiety to some degree all my life. And I always use this story to illustrate the severity of it. In my youth, I was about 5 years old and I had a nervous habit of biting my tongue. And I actually
literally biting it.
Yes,
Yeah.
literally biting my tongue.
Okay.
And I actually bit my tongue so hard and so often that I actually punctured it. So it was
Oh my goodness.
It was a severe situation for me. That was when my parents took me to see a specialist, and I was officially diagnosed with, at that time it was separation anxiety, hypersensitivity, all these different things. I didn't want to go to school. My mom was my safe person. I didn't want to leave her.
Yeah. I have 4 little girls, and we've all been through that, not to that extreme, but yeah.
Exactly. And so what was actually recommended was that my parents pull me out of everything except for school. So I took piano lessons, and I was in Sunday school and things like that. And they pulled me out of all of that. And
would they recommend that today, do you think?
I don't think so. I think
either.
the intention was that if I gradually, as I got older, would start to want to do more things, and that if I didn't, to maybe seek more help. But my family actually moved. That was in Pennsylvania. The specialist was in Philadelphia, and my family moved to Michigan within, I think, a year of that. So what happened really was I internalized this anxiety. And so my parents didn't even really know that I was dealing with it, because so it was very clear that I was a shy kid, that I got nervous doing different things, but the level of panic that I felt really wasn't evident because I was so introverted that I really kept all of that to myself, to the point I remember being about 7 years old, going out to dinner with my family, sitting with my sister in the back of the minivan. And I said, I'm doing that thing where I take a breath and it doesn't go all the way down.
Oh.
And I just thought that was a normal thing that happened to people all the time. And it was actually the anxiety for me.
Yeah.
So I had, I was in public school very briefly in my youth, but we did school picture day, and I would be so nervous about school picture day, I would chew on my top lip. So in every photo that I have from my yearbooks, my upper lip was all chapped because I would be worrying that upper lip.
Oh, that's killing me. The mama in me. I have one of my daughters has anxiety, which we're going to talk about how bad yours got, not to that level, but enough. So not to that level, but it's something I don't understand. I have not ever experienced anxiety, only, situational depression, going through my divorce. It's depressing, whatever. But it's as a parent, it's very difficult for me to understand, and I have to really work at patience. And the breath thing you just said is so interesting to me, because yesterday morning she went down the rabbit hole really fast, and I said, okay, hold on, let's calm down. Let's just take some breaths together. Let's just take 3 deep breaths. And she goes, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help me. I can't do it right. And it just makes me more upset. And I don't want to do that with you. And I just thought she was like too far for me to catch her. But hearing you say that deep breath thing where it doesn't go all the way down, I wonder if that's more of what she's feeling.
Yes.
And like literally like she can't do it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I think there are, anxiety manifests, and even severe anxiety manifests differently for everybody. But the breathing thing has always been my biggest trigger. Like, honestly, even I'm fine, but even as I'm talking about it, I can, it's harder for me to breathe, because that's just always been my, I don't know what you would call it. I guess, just my.
That's how it manifests for you. Yeah.
That's really where it goes immediately.
So this continued to snowball and get worse for you.
It did. I was passionate about horses. I loved horses, and so I got involved with horseback riding. I think I was about 8 years old. When I was about 8 years old, I became homeschooled. My sister actually has cystic fibrosis, but it's a unique strain of cystic fibrosis. So she was actually treated for chronic asthma when she was a child. And she spent a lot of time in hospitals and missing school. And they didn't really keep her caught up very well. So my mom finally said, I need to try to do this, because, she understood where my sister was better than anybody else. So she asked me, of course, do you want to continue going to school by yourself? Or do you want to stay home with your sister?
That was easy for you.
That was so easy for me. I was just like, score. So, but I also got involved in horseback riding. I'm very passionate about animals, and I loved horses from a young age. So I got started in that around the same time that I became homeschooling. So my social outlet shifted, and I still had the outlet of going to the horseback riding. So that went along pretty well. We moved again. And of course, because we moved, we didn't, make a lot of friends and things like that.
Why so much moving?
My dad's work.
Okay.
Yeah. And we spent most of our time in the Chicago suburbs. That was good, maybe 10 years. I'm not, maybe a little bit less. But I still was horseback riding. I actually owned a horse, which had been my childhood dream. And I was about 16, and the anxiety had manifested to such a degree that I eventually, I just lost my passion for the horseback riding, and I was working at the barn as well to kind of offset the cost of having the horse.
Sure.
And I got so overwhelmed every day with waking up in this anxiety of, it was no longer, I get to go see my horse, I get to go to the barn. It was, I have to go to the barn. I have to leave the house. And it was, just weighing on me. And so I knew that, especially because having a horse is a huge financial responsibility, that if I wasn't able to completely throw myself into ownership of a horse, then I wasn't meant to have that horse.
Right.
So I was at 16, I sold my horse to my trainer, and he loved her. So it made it a little bit easier. And I had developed an interest in web design and graphic design and things like that. So I more or less sold my horse and bought a laptop and just kind of.
And you never had to leave the house.
Exactly. I threw
Yeah.
myself into that process and became housebound for it actually lasted for about 10 years.
And when you
Um,
say housebound, can you give
mhm.
us a little bit more detail?
Yeah,
What were you able to do or not
yeah,
able to do?
yeah, absolutely. I didn't really start to use that term until I first began treatment a couple of years ago because I thought, well, some people, will think of, you know, literally not being able to leave the house. I functioned outside of the house with what I call my safe people, my mom and my sister,
Hmm.
essentially. So if I left the house, literally it was with them. Um, and we would go shopping, we would go out to eat on special occasions and different things like that. Um, just run random errands and all of this different stuff. So I was out of the house, and yet my goal every time I left the house was to be invisible, to the point that I remember I would go shopping with my mom, and it was like I wouldn't even, 18, 19, 20 years old, would not really leave her side when we were shopping. I would always shop wherever she was shopping in the store. And, we would get maybe takeout and bring it home for lunch because I wouldn't want to go out to eat. And then it gradually became more and more, I started telling myself I don't want to do things. Um,
Yes, that's what I hear from my daughter.
yeah,
This is like trying
yeah.
not to panic listening to you talk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, somebody that I met recently, his daughter is going through the same thing that I went through. She's 20 years old and she's wanting to drop out of college and different things like that. So, um, I recently had a conversation with this man, and it was like kind of blew his mind because
Yeah.
he's like, this is exactly what she's dealing with.
Yeah.
And it
My
blew my
baby
mind.
11. She's 11 and there's so
Okay.
much of it.
Mm,
She
yes.
doesn't have a lot of passion for most things.
Yeah.
She
And
does
it's
things, but
hard.
begrudgingly, very, very
Yeah.
begrudgingly. Would much
Yeah.
rather just be home and play on her
Mhm.
phone or watch TV.
Exactly. Exactly. For me, it was always the computer. And I had a dog, a Sheltie, and he was my best friend. So,
Yeah.
there was that element too. It's like, why would I want to leave my best friend,
And so
Um,
you got to a point where you couldn't even have phone calls.
right. I struggled very much. I wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't answer the doorbell if it rang. I always think now about Emily Dickinson. I read once that she um, ran away from the doorbell, basically. And so that's kind of what I did as well. And if there was, even if I heard the mail truck come up the driveway, I would hide in the house until the mail truck was gone. It was actually a comfort for me to hide.
Was there a thought in your head like did you feel like you were protecting yourself? You couldn't help it? Like
I
what was
I
going through your
did,
mind?
yeah. It was that, I guess, what do they call it? The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. It's kind of your fight or flight, um,
Right.
feeling. And so when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, it triggers that needing to protect yourself, essentially.
Did
And
you know that it cuz my kiddo will say to me she knows it doesn't make sense, but she can't help it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It did, and it was just always my truth. And the other thing that I said was, besides, I would say I don't want to, but I would also say I can't.
Yeah.
And because I felt like it made no sense. I could physically, I was physically capable. I had two working legs, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I was physically capable of walking out the door of, I had driven enough to get my license, so I had a functioning license. I had every right to drive a car, but I told myself I physically can't do it because I'm not capable. And it was all the fear talking. It really was. It was the fear telling me you can't do it, you'll make a mistake. Um, and I should backpedal to second grade, when I was in public school. I actually had sort of, I don't like to use the word traumatic, because that's such an extensive word, and I like to be respectful. But for me personally, it was this really intense experience where I essentially had a panic attack in my classroom
Oh,
in
it's
front of all the other
humiliating too, right?
yeah. And the teacher thought that I was acting out, so she actually reprimanded me. And I had the panic attack because she was reprimanding me for a mistake I made. So it was like, you know, as the panic just kind of escalated, she just continued to make it worse, essentially, because she continued to draw attention to me, and, she was angry with me and all this different stuff. And it really translated from that young age into I can't make mistakes.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so, from that moment on, essentially, I was always, and being hypersensitive as well, I was sort of this overly vigilant child trying to avoid making the grown-ups angry, trying to avoid making any mistakes, and feeling like I didn't know when I was going to make them.
So
Because
you were afraid to do anything
yes,
because you might make a
exactly.
mistake. That
And
hurts my
and that's
heart.
yeah, and that's the thing about a mistake, is it's a mistake.
Yeah, it is, and it's all
So
okay.
yeah, and you never intentionally make a mistake. You know what I mean? It's a mistake happens without intention, without, your desire to
Of
affect some
course.
kind of, reaction. So the idea of being afraid of making mistakes is like trying to predict the future. And then when you
Absolutely.
realize you can't, it's like you just don't want to go into the future at all.
So
So,
what was a turning point for
mm,
you? Or is it, oh, I guess I should ask, is this still how, is this, you're on the phone with me. We're having this
hmm
interview. So something
yeah.
has shifted for you.
Oh, yes,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. Can you
Um,
share that with us?
when I turned 26, I had lived all these years trying to make excuses around it. And it was sort of after high school, kind of this sense of, oh, I just don't know. I'm taking a year before college. And then it was, I'm just trying to find out what I want to do. And it was really just kind of this elephant in the room that I never acknowledged. And I always thought I had to keep it secret. And just after my 26th birthday, I realized that, it had not gotten any easier, that there was something that I was dealing with. I had actually gone with my sister to see one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert,
I
and
love Elizabeth
um,
Gilbert. Yeah.
I adore her, and she's so nice. I met her briefly, and going to her book event, I was terrified. And my poor sister, drove the car, and actually, like, I couldn't even have a conversation with her. All I could
Oh,
do was
wow.
look out the window because I was so flooded. And it was painful. It really was. And I would have panic attacks leading up to these types of events for days. So it was this really, really difficult thing for me to do. And as I sat in that dark auditorium listening to her being interviewed, she was just hitting the nail on the head in so many ways for me, as far as my fear. And the fact that she was speaking about it so
Yeah.
openly was really powerful for me. So when I met her, we did a little photo with her. She was kind enough to sign a couple of books and take photos. And we took a photo really quick, and I stopped her and I said, I just want to tell you, Eat, Pray, Love was like a game changer for me. It really was. And I said, she didn't necessarily deal with social anxiety. She's a very extroverted, very outgoing person. But I said there was sort of this listlessness of the soul that she dealt with in that book that I really related to. And I told her that I had severe anxiety and all of this different stuff. And she hugged me, and she was just like, thank you so much for sharing that. And that was genuinely the first time I had ever
Mm.
actually voiced my struggle.
Did
And
you feel brave when you said that
I
to her?
did. I
Yeah.
really did.
Good.
I felt brave, and I felt validated after,
Yeah.
especially her response was just like, from the heart. She was just like, thank you. Thank you. And So I knew from that moment, I was like, I'm on a journey. This is a journey for me. This is not something that I'm supposed to spend my life keeping secret and trying to ignore. And um, this is something that I need to address. So I started working with a therapist just after my 26th birthday. I spent the first year with her really, and I had never, through all of this, had never seen a therapist or anything like that. I wasn't really willing to do that. Of course, the anxiety gets in your way with things like that
Right.
as well.
Did your
So,
parents try to get you to see a therapist?
um, they did. They were. I mean, my family is incredible because they supported me kind of no matter
Yeah.
what. And my mom has always told me, in your time. And she's always said, she did say, I think, if you just wanted to see someone, she was like, let me know how I can make it easier for you. She was willing to go see the person first,
Right. Yeah.
make all the phone calls for me and whatnot. And in the end, I ended up reaching out to my therapist via email, which was really nice that she had that option for somebody like me who was, I would have just avoided making a
Ever
phone call.
going. Yeah.
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 And so, I did all of this, and again my mom kept saying, it's your time. You're doing this in your time. And for the first year of my therapy, it's funny, I remember going in and talking to the therapist, and my mom drove me, and she sat in the waiting room while I was there for my first session. And I remember saying to the therapist, like, how many sessions am I going to need to do before I
Before I'm
don't
all
have to
better.
be here? Yeah. And I was like, are we thinking like 4, and that was 4 years ago. And
And you're still going, right?
I'm still in therapy, yes.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, I'm happily probably going to continue a therapeutic practice of some sort for the rest of my life because
Sure.
it's been life changing for me. Um,
Absolutely.
I did, the first year she and I worked together it was revolutionary for me because I my fear had always been driven by this bully inside me that was like, you just need to push yourself through it. You need to do things and live differently than you are right now. And so it was, you need to drive that car, you need to go out in public, you need to do all these different things. And when I saw her, she was like, no. She was like, what do you need right now? You need to take care of yourself. You need to
Yeah.
show yourself some compassion. And so it was here, I was thinking I was going to get this drill sergeant who was going to be like making me kind of like that teacher had, making me go through all this awful emotion and everything. And instead she was like, let's let you decide when you're going to be ready to do that. Let's let you decide what you want to do. And so it literally went, um, you know, going and sitting in the car one day and then not going anywhere and then going and just driving around the block and coming home and then driving and going to the library.
Right.
Um,
Just at your own pace.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, kind of this permission to say to myself, you're enough just as you are, and to say to the anxiety, it's okay, I hear you. I'm not going to try to, bully you or shut you up or anything like that. I understand you need to be heard, but I'm going to hear you out and guide you through as best I can. And so it really became this process of no longer seeing the anxiety as a bully, as a
The enemy.
yes. And instead, what was really interesting that we did was we started to identify that anxiety as myself when I was that little girl in the second grade classroom having
Oh
the
my
panic attack.
goodness.
And so it was essentially like this little girl hiding in a closet because she didn't want to make a mistake in the world and get yelled at or anything. And so that's how I started to recognize the anxiety. And when you see your anxiety in that respect, you can't be mad at it. You can't do anything but be compassionate towards
Yeah. You want to
it.
comfort her.
Exactly, exactly. And so you want her to live her best life. So you're not going to enable her or anything like that. You're going to make the best decisions out of love, and you're going to go through hard times that you need to go through to get her into her best life. But you're going to do it all with a compassion and a grace that is just really, really important. So that was our process. And I also started, within a year or so, I started implementing medication. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to give
Right. No.
medical
Fair.
advice per se, but I do still take an antidepressant, which has worked really, really well for me, the combination of the medication and therapy. So I will just say that much. But in that, it's been 4 years now. I'm turning 30 next month. This month.
Happy birthday.
Thank
May.
you.
Yeah. Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
May. And yeah, so in that time, I went from started driving to eventually I started attending a support group for social anxiety here in Connecticut. Um, that introduced me to my support group facilitator, Marla, who is one of my really good friends. And through her, I got involved with another, like a group therapy that met for a while in New Haven. She facilitates a public speaking workshop. So I actually went and worked with her on that. She
That's
needed
awesome, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because my role is to videotape the members of this workshop. And the first time, it was last January, was the first time I went and videotaped the attendees. And I pulled her aside and I said, I need to talk to the group. And Janet Esposito is the woman who created this workshop. And she was there as well. And I just said, I need to tell my story to this group because I was so moved.
Wow.
These were people who, I think one woman was an actor. They were, business professionals. Somebody had, a startup company in New York City or something like that. And so they were all different phases of their life, far different, far removed from where I was. And, living very external, socially complete lives to a degree that, I had kind of looked at that and said, oh, I'll never get there. And then they came to this workshop and they were talking about their public speaking fears. And it was anxiety. So as they were talking about these fears, I realized that what they were addressing was, in some respect, a variation of what I had been addressing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the way that I described it to them was I said, we're all going down the same dark tunnel, but you're further down and you're holding a light for somebody like me. Um,
Oh, that's a
and
beautiful
so
analogy.
thank you. So I got up there and I recorded myself as well because I said, I'm not going to get off easy. Everybody else had to get recorded. So I recorded myself and I told them my story and they were deeply moved. And it actually has become a tradition for me. I have done 3 more workshops since that one. And at each workshop, I tell my story.
It must be
Um,
so incredibly empowering.
it is. It really, really is. And it's one of those things that, you know, my mom had always told me, like, I think out of fear for me as well as practicality, when, I started to say, I want to tell people that I have anxiety, she was kind of like, you can't do that. Like, it
Oh,
wasn't, it didn't see it. It was, I think in her mind, she had to protect me. And that was, to do that is to be very, very vulnerable and open yourself up to any kind of response. People could say, well,
right.
get over it, or, they could have no compassion. So, she was very reluctant when I first said that I wanted to start being more public about this. But again, she's always supported me. So she just kind of was like, okay, I won't hold on too tight, I'll let you do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was the case for me personally that giving voice to it made it lose its power. So
Yes.
what had really kept me in the house for so many years hadn't as much been the anxiety itself. It was the shame of avoiding the anxiety, of feeling like there was something wrong with me. And so to speak publicly about it was really this revolutionary way of telling myself, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
You're okay
Yeah.
exactly as you are. And really debunking that shame in a sense.
Did it feel really brave to do that, to step out, to stop
Mm,
letting your fear,
mhm.
your anxiety
Yeah.
win?
Yeah. It did. It felt liberating. It felt scary, but more than
Sure.
anything, it felt right. It just felt right.
Does it still feel brave?
It does. It
Yeah.
really does. It's much more a part of my life now, but it's funny because I will relive it, as I tell my story, and it really empowers me because it's like, look where I am. you
Yes.
know. And I have since begun I drive all around Connecticut, New York by myself in different I actually love driving. It's actually very therapeutic for me.
So,
Um,
Casey, do you have any daily grounding rituals? Anything that you do that just sort of keeps
um,
you balanced?
you know, I need to practice them more lately. um, I I love yoga. I don't do it
Me
every
too.
day, but
Me
I
either.
love yeah. But it's the most restorative thing for me, honestly. I have a home practice, and I would watch a lot of YouTube videos and things like that. But my favorite thing to do is just to get out my mat and to put on some music and to just move, and connect with my
Mhm.
body. And
Nice.
that is it's almost spiritual for me. And it's an acceptance practice. The interesting thing about healing from anxiety has been that once the anxiety is um, alleviated, so to speak, or you're able to peel back that layer, you find other things, other
Of
struggles and other.
course. Yep.
So for me now, it's actually body image and dealing with disordered eating and all this different stuff. So this process that brought me a lot of calm when I was in recovery, so to speak, from the anxiety is now teaching me self acceptance.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah. So it's, again, the synchronicity of how things come into your life.
It is. Those all sound like really lovely successes, tiny little or
Yeah.
big, across the board
Hmm.
successes. And I
Yeah.
always like to ask each of my guests how they celebrate success. So as you
Hmm.
started to break through and break
Right.
away, and each day now still, when you know you've done something and done it well, or you're really proud of where you've come from and where you are, how do you
Hmm.
celebrate that?
I celebrate with rest. I really
I
do.
hear that. I hear that.
I do. I celebrate with the permission to let myself rest, to give myself a breath, and to step away. Yeah.
So as we come to the end of this show,
Hmm.
one of my touch points is always how we make the world better, and I would love for you
Hmm.
to share with us your favorite charitable organization to support.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. I was giving this a lot of thought prior to the interview, but I would really say that the charity that I have most been involved with is the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
Sure, for your sister.
Yeah, exactly. And my sister was actually a professional ballerina for many years. And when she was, I think, about 25, um, this unique strain of the disease that she has manifested, and she had to end her dancing career.
Oh, that's
And
heartbreaking.
she had this awful cough. And my sister's favorite thing in the world is to laugh. And she couldn't laugh without
Oh, that's
coughing. So, aside from that, she started losing her voice regularly, would completely lose her voice. She actually would have to use like a uh, text to talk app on
oh
her
wow.
phone. Yeah. And eventually she started going to the CF clinic at Yale in New Haven. And the treatment that she got through them, which was made possible in part by the foundation, changed her life dramatically. And her lung function now is at, I think, 110%, something like
Wow.
that.
That's tremendous.
It's amazing.
I love that. So,
Yeah.
as I always ask everybody who's out there listening, if you're not familiar with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, go check them out, share them. If you have something to give, do that. If you can volunteer your time, do that. That's what makes the world better and makes us stronger as a community. So, we'd love to give a little love here to Casee's preferred charitable organization.
Thank
Casee,
you.
would you share your 3 words with us one more time?
Absolutely. Compassion, courage, creativity.
I love it. The 3 C's. Those are excellent,
Exactly.
strong, empowered words. Casee, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I think these are really important things to talk about. Trying to understand and build community and support one another.
Yeah.
It's important. And I'm grateful that you're taking time to help remove the stigma from depression and anxiety, because it's so important, and you offer so much empowerment. It's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm grateful for you for giving people like me a platform and celebrating, kind of the everyday bravery that
Thank you.
It tends to get overlooked.
Yeah. All of the bravery is important. And I do appreciate that. I love that about the show, is we can talk about the little average things and then also the big, tremendous things. So Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to see you next Thursday. And this is Heather Vickery reminding you, as always, to choose bravely. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Lost Format Apparel, a socially conscious clothing company. You already know that homelessness is a huge problem. Over 500,000 Americans are living without shelter and millions more without consistent access to everyday basics. My friends at Lost Format know that solving homelessness is a much larger problem than any one company or person can solve on their own. It requires teamwork, sacrifice, strength, and building communities through personal and professional relationships. And isn't that exactly what the Brave Files podcast is all about? That's why I'm proud to say that the Brave Files has partnered with Lost Format, and together we're working to change the face of consumerism in addressing homelessness. You can now get one of 2 fantastic shirts custom designed specifically for the Brave Files. Each order goes towards providing necessities to the homeless. We have one shirt that, of course, says "Choose Bravely," and another that reminds you that brave is always greater than fearless. Head on over to vickeryandco.com/store to see both beautiful shirts and to check out the entire product line from Lost Format. All of their stuff is super soft and comfortable and has an amazing fit. Use promo code BRAVE to get 10% off of your Brave Files custom t-shirts. And if you have an order over $30, your shipping is free. I choose bravely to take the plunge to help solve homelessness. Are you with me?
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.
Special thanks to our editor and audio mix expert, Andrew Olson. I am eternally grateful for all that he does to make each week sound so fantastic. You can hear more of Andrew's work at findandrewolson.com.